So I'll be talking about this objective, explain the meaning of epistemology and knowledge from a philosophical perspective. So epistemology is the doctrine, study, or theory of knowledge. It asks questions like, what is knowledge? What does knowledge mean? What does it mean to know something? What can be known? What counts as knowledge? And what are appropriate justifications for knowledge, etc. So epistemology is the study, the doctrine, the theory, and knowledge is the object of that study or doctrine or theory. And the meaning of knowledge is not a settled matter, in philosophy, but a prominent definition is that knowledge is justified true belief. And we can look into those three terms. So justified means there's a warrant, there's a basis, there's a justification for a claim. It's not an empty claim. It's not a claim you make on a whim. There's some justification. So justified. And true means that the claim does match up with actual or settled conditions. And then belief means that a person or a group of people hold or endorses that claim. So if I say, I know that the apple is red, I could justify that in a number of ways. I could take a random poll with lots of people and see if they agree. I could measure the wavelengths of the skin of the apple. I could hold the apple up to a paint chip that we agree is red, etc. And I think a helpful way to get to the bottom of definitions like these is to play around with them, like asking, well, knowledge is justified true belief, but what would a justified false belief look like? Or what would an unjustified true belief look like? Or what would a justified true claim be that isn't a belief? So for example, a justified false belief could be something like, there's nothing up the magician's sleeve. So, the magician is good at hiding that he has a card up his sleeve. So, and he shows like, hey, look, there's nothing up my sleeve. And we may be justified in believing, oh yeah, there's nothing, we're justified. The magician has shown us there is nothing up their sleeve, but it's false because there actually is something up his sleeve. So it doesn't align with settled understanding or the world in some way. So that would be an example of a justified false belief. Or if you've seen the movie Back to the Future, a justified false belief could be something like, Doc Brown was shot to death by the people in the van because Marty McFly saw Doc get shot, saw the violence that happened. So he was justified in believing that. He had that belief, but in the end it was, and sorry if you haven't seen it, I don't mean to spoil it, but in the end that was a false belief. An unjustified true belief could be something like, it will rain tomorrow, so imagining that all the weather forecasters said there's no chance of rain, or there's little to no chance of rain, the skies are clear, it will not be raining tomorrow, but there's no justification for it, but somebody believes that it will rain tomorrow, and as it happens, it did rain tomorrow. So just imagining if the weather forecasters were our only justifications, then we could say, okay, that was an unjustified belief, but it was true. And then a justified true claim that isn't a belief could be anything that is, here's a statement that is true and it's justified, but this person or these group of people or this group of people doesn't believe it. So an easy way to think about this would be, okay, if we went back in time before the discovery of the structure of DNA, if we went back in time, we could say DNA carries genetic information. That's a justified claim. It's a true claim. But someone who doesn't believe that or has no framework to understand what that means, I wouldn't believe that. So that would be an example of a justified, true non-belief. So that's just to play around with that particular conventional way to express knowledge in philosophy as justified, true belief. That justified means, okay, there's some basis, there's some justification, some grounding for this. True means that that claim aligns with settled understanding or aligns with the conditions of the world in some way. And belief is somebody holds, some person or some group of people hold this belief. So that's a justified true belief. And the example of teasing out those words is just to show, just to help understand and appreciate what those words mean by swapping out. So a justified false belief, unjustified true belief, justified true non-belief. So back to the example of this apple, or the claim, I know that the apple is red. We talked about how we could justify that. We could take a random poll. We could measure the wavelengths. We could ask an expert in color. We could take a paint chip from a paint store and hold it up against the apple. And if it was a red paint chip and it matched with the color of the apple, we could be justified. We could be justified in claiming, in saying that we know the apple is red. So now if a different kind of claim, if I were to, for this claim, I know that this triangle has 3 sides, I could justify that in a number of ways. I could gather lots of samples of triangles and count the sides and compare this triangle with the others. I could poll a number of random people asking how many sides this triangle has. I could ask an expert on triangles to examine this triangle. And I could also look up the definition of triangle. And in fact, I'm treating these 2 examples, the apple, saying, I know this apple is red, and I know this triangle has 3 sides. I'm treating these like they're similar, but they are essentially different in ways that will reverberate in the development of epistemology and the history of modern Western philosophy. So in order to justify the first claim, this apple is red, I need to examine the particular apple. In order to justify the second claim, I know that a triangle has 3 sides. I don't need to look at any particular triangle. I just need to know the meaning of triangle. I can know that it is true that a triangle has 3 sides prior to any investigation or without doing any sort of test. Just by knowing what the definition of triangle is, I can say about any triangle, this triangle has 3 sides, or this triangle, if it is a triangle, it has 3 sides. So again, those are 2 different types of claims. The one where it requires us to look at some specific phenomena, and another one where we just need to look at the definition of what we're talking about. So again, these are 2 sorts of knowledge that will, the implications of those are going to reverberate through the history of modern Western philosophy and the modern era, or in the modern era of Western philosophy.